Good morning, it's Monday the 29th of November and welcome to Atlantic Capital Markets roundup of the coming week's economic highlights to keep an eye out for. As always, we'll start with a quick summary of the key macro data points coming up this week in the world's markets, and we'll then take a look in more detail at some of the biggest stories straight afterwards. So, straight to business. So let's take a look at the economic numbers being issued this week. And starting today, we have the latest German CPI figures and a speech from the newly reappointed Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. Tuesday brings us the German unemployment change figures, the latest GDP figures in Canada, the US consumer confidence numbers, and the latest consumer index inflation in the Eurozone. We'll talk more about that in a moment. On Wednesday, we'll hear the latest GDP growth figures in Australia. We'll also hear the latest ISM manufacturing PMIs for the US, as well as the manufacturing PMIs for the UK and the Eurozone. Also, we'll hear how retail sales are doing in Germany in the lead up to Christmas. We'll get the latest US ADP employment figures, and finally on Wednesday, a key meeting of OPEC Plus in the light of the ever unpredictable dynamics in demand at the moment, with potential travel restrictions still in play. And we'll discuss this in more detail in a moment. Thursday brings us the latest Australia retail sales figures and the latest unemployment figures across the Eurozone, as well as the US jobless claims. Finally on Friday, the latest services PMI figures in China, UK, Eurozone and US services and composite PMIs, the retail sales figures across the Eurozone, the ISM non-manufacturing numbers for the US, and finally, will we see continued positive news in the latest US non-farm payroll figures as they're released on Friday? Again, something that we'll discuss shortly. And the companies that we'll hear updates from this week are as follows. On Monday, we'll hear from Amigo Holdings. On Tuesday, it's the turn of Future, Topps Tiles, Shaftesbury, and we'll hear how 2021 has been for the discount airline EasyJet as they release their full year results. Also, half-yearlies from the online bank Wise, half-yearlies from water utility company Pennon Group, and Q3s from Salesforce in the US, and we'll discuss these latter four in more detail straight after this. On Wednesday, it's the turn of Snowflake, and finally on Thursday, AJ Bell, Asana and DocuSign. Last week ended sharply lower with the shock news that a new variant has resurfaced and could pose a key risk for the market. Now, after the news broke of this totally new variant in South Africa, which could show stronger resistance to existing treatments, this sent stocks sharply lower. However, little is truly known at this stage, causing some market commentators to suggest it was an overreaction. The overriding fear is that the new version, which has mutated significantly from the original, could turn out to be far more resistant to existing treatments. The emergence of this news certainly unnerved investors on Friday when thin volumes exacerbated a sell-off. The latest headline could also raise doubts over the speed at which the Fed could tighten monetary policy. All eyes will be following the news flow this week to truly assess the impact. So on that note, let's take a look at some of this week's key stories in more detail. Tuesday brings us the latest Eurozone CPI figures. Now, inflation in the Eurozone surged to a 13-year high of 4.1% in October. The rise in inflation is being driven by surging energy prices, which are up 23% year on year and are by far the largest contributor to inflation. Supply chain bottlenecks and product shortages are also contributing to the rise in prices. However, the ECB are still of the view that inflation will ease back in 2022. And although the ECB announced that they would buy fewer bonds due to surging prices, the central bank is more dovish than their peers at the Bank of England and the Fed. And this is largely owing to the amount of slack that there is in the Eurozone labour market compared to the US and the UK. That said, the minutes of the latest ECB meeting reveal that the central bank was willing to keep all options open for now. A high CPI read could boost the euro, so do of course keep an eye on the euro. EasyJet is due to report full-year figures on Tuesday, just as a new variant threatens to unleash turmoil in the airline and travel industry, after new travel restrictions were once again introduced. Now, the news of the new travel restrictions come as the airline industry continues on its long road to recovery, after being pushed to the brink by the last 18 months of pressure. Still, the new restrictions are from 6 nations in southern Africa, and EasyJet's European routes remain in place despite rising cases in Europe. Investors will be interested in management's views on the likelihood of further travel restrictions. EasyJet has already revealed that headline loss before tax for the full year to end September is expected between £1.135 billion and £1.175 billion. So also on Tuesday, the international payments firm Wise is expected to report half-year results as the share price trades below its IPO price just under 5 months ago. After reaching an all-time high of £11.76 in late September, the price has been falling lower, hitting an all-time low of £7 last week. The provisional Q2 update was upbeat, with revenue up 25% annually to £132.8 million, and active customers also increased a respectable 22% year-on-year. However, news that 3 clearinghouses were working with US and European banks to speed up cross-border payments, a core area for Wise, has unnerved investors. Co-founder Tarvet Henriques, also selling out 10 million of his own shares, has added to the downbeat tone surrounding the stock. So after water company peers reported last week, this week it's Pennon Group's turn. So the update comes after the British Environmental Agency accused Pennon of being one of the worst polluters in the sector, with raw sewage slipping into the rivers and the sea, whilst the firm underperforms targets for the 10th year running. In September, Pennon said that it had seen record demand for water amidst people moving into the regions it covers over the past year. With business reopening, usage is expected to pick up. And finally on Tuesday, the US cloud-based software company Salesforce is due to report Q3 earnings. Expectations are for another robust revenue reading as companies continue to digitalize, and thanks also to a boost following new acquisitions. However, earnings are expected to come under pressure against comparisons from previous years. However, Salesforce have said that revenue is expected around $6.7 billion in Q3. Wall Street is expecting $6.8 billion, up firmly from $5.42 billion the year before. The firm raised full-year expectations in September with aims of annual returns of $26.25 to $26.35 billion, around 24% higher than last year. However, comparisons to last year will be tough as demand surged amidst working from home orders. Loss per share is expected at 5 cents. The share price has rallied 30% across the year so far. The OPEC Plus group are due to meet on Wednesday and Thursday as both supply and demand headwinds grow. On the demand side, surging cases in Europe and travel restrictions in southern Africa have hurt the demand outlook significantly in recent sessions. Europe has seen more lockdown restrictions, with Austria and Holland tightening their stance, whilst Germany looks set to follow suit. At the same time, the US led a coordinated agreement with other major oil importers such as Japan, India and potentially China to release strategic reserves in order to lower the price of oil. Meanwhile, OPEC, along with other agencies, are concerned of a supply glut next year. In the latest meeting, OPEC resisted calls to raise oil output. So will we see OPEC Plus reaction to the latest developments by slowing production? And finally, Friday sees the release of the latest US non-farm payroll figures. October's non-farm payroll saw 531,000 jobs added in the US, and September's number was upwardly revised to 312,000 from 194,000. The encouraging number supported the Fed's decision to start tapering its $120 billion monthly bond purchases at the November meeting a few days prior to the release. Unemployment also improved, falling to 4.6%, down from 4.8% in September. The Fed had previously said that they wanted to see further improvements in the labour market in order to tighten monetary policy. However, the latest Fed minutes suggested the central bank is already considering the conditions under which it would speed up the monetary policy tightening process. So as a result, do keep an eye on the US dollar and, of course, US indices. So that's all the big stories in detail. Let's wrap up with a look at the dividends due this week. In the FTSE 100, we'll hear from 3i, National Grid, Royal Mail, Severn Trent and Johnson Matthey. In the FTSE 250, Bellway, Alliance Trust, Oxford Instruments, 91, Big Yellow Group, Pets at Home, Telecom Plus, Great Portland Estates and AVI Global Trust. So that's the highlights coming up this week. Let me remind you not to forget to click on that subscribe button just to make sure you don't miss our regular market updates and our special market analysis videos as soon as they're released. And of course, if you're interested in the markets, don't forget to check out our app, which you can download from the App Store to your mobile phone. And this app gives you a whole host of very useful functionalities as an investor. So until next time, from all of us here at Atlantic Capital Markets, have yourself a great week.